The paper town burned without fire. Not all at once, not with smoke, not even with the dignity of a clean ending. Millinocket and East Millinocket grew from the wilderness into one of the most powerful paper-making centers in America. Then, watch the mills go dark, the jobs vanish, and the old industrial grandeur turn into a kind of permanent after-image. The place still sits there at the edge of Katahdin, huge in memory, and suddenly very small in the ledger. And that's the contradiction at the heart of it. A town built to produce the nation's words, then left to reinvent itself as a place people pass through on the way to a mountain that doesn't care. I'm Andrew Wilcox, and this is Drive-Thru Towns. From the road, Millinocket looks like a working town fossil with good bones, long streets, brick, mill structures, a business district that still has the posture of confidence, even when the cash register tells a different story. East Millinocket has the same industrial gravity, the same river-working DNA, the same sense that this landscape was organized by something bigger than local imagination. If you're moving at highway speed, you miss the scale. You miss the fact that this was once a place where the lights never really went off, where shifts ran around the clock, and where towns' identities were so fused with the mill that for a long stretch the whole map might as well have been a company brochure. Before the mills, before the smokestacks, before the boom house and the company town geometry, there was a cabin on the west branch of the Penobscot River. Thomas Fowler arrived in 1829 and became the first settler of what would eventually become Millinocket. He cleared land, built a log cabin, and started a farm at the end of Shad Pond. Then, Henry David Thoreau showed up in 1846 and hired Fowler and Fowler's son to guide him toward Katahdin. The famous walk into the Maine woods passed right through this place, where the wilderness was still not a backdrop, but the main event. Thoreau later turned that journey into the Maine woods, which means Millinocket's origin story is tied not just to labor and industry, but to one of America's most durable wilderness myths. It's kind of a neat twist. The town began with a cabin and a guide, then became a machine that swallowed the forest whole. The real birth of Millinocket happened in 1899, when the Great Northern Paper Company decided this remote stretch of forest was perfect for a mill and built a town around it with astonishing speed. 18 months. That's the legend. The company carved streets, houses, infrastructure, and a full civic life out of the woods so fast the place earned the nickname the Magic City. Magic, of course, is just labor wearing a silk hat. The mill was a high-tech marvel for its era, powered by the west branch of the Penobscot and designed to produce newsprint at industrial scale. At its peak, Great Northern became the largest paper mill in the world, operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, turning out hundreds of papers daily. This wasn't just a mill. It was a worldview with boilers. The workforce came from everywhere. Italian stonemasons, Polish, Finnish, Lithuanian, Hungarian laborers, French Canadians from the northern border and the St. John Valley. My grandfather, my great-grandfather, my great-great-grandfather. In 1900, Millinocket's population was already international, and more than 400 residents were Italian-born. That's one of the lesser-told marvels of this place. The town wasn't merely thrown together from the local woods. It was assembled by migration. Men and women arrived to do the brutal, exacting work of turning forest and water into paper, and then into wages, and then into a town with enough life to support an opera house, a hotel, sports teams, a band, even a golf course. It had the organized confidence of a place that believed the future would keep showing up on time. If the mill was the brain, The Jesus boom house was the nerve center. Out of the river, long drives sent millions of trees downstream toward the paper mill. The boom house controlled the sorting and movement of those logs at a strategic point in the West Branch Penobscot system. It was work so specific, it sounds invented, but it was the mechanical rhythm beneath the region's entire economy. Imagine the noise, logs colliding, chains clanking, river water dragging bark against timber, men in wet boots standing at the edge of a machine the size of a watershed, deciding which trees belonged where, and then sending them on to be cooked in the white sheets that would become newspapers, catalogs, phone books, and the paper in half the country's hands. That's the unseen elegance of the place. It was not just a mill town. It was a logistics town before that word got fashionable. For a long time, the mill was not only the employer, but benefactor, landlord, and social architect. Great Northern supported the schools, built housing, and helped structure the town's daily life. During the Depression, the company reportedly kept people working by shortening hours rather than cutting jobs, which is about as close as industrial capitalism gets to a bedtime story. The wages were the highest manufacturing wages in the state. In the 1970s, Millinocket's annual gross manufacturing pay outpaced the Maine average by a wide margin. That matters because the town's identity wasn't nostalgia driven, it was payroll driven. People could live here, raise families here, and imagine a future here because the mill made the arithmetic work. When the arithmetic changed, the whole town felt it in the knees. Global competition hit hard. Newsprint declined. Ownership changed hands. Paper production lost ground to cheaper imports and a shrinking print economy. The sequence is ugly because it's ordinary, right? Corporate transitions, bankruptcy, layoffs, closure. The Millinocket mill closed in 2008. East Millinocket followed in 2014. By then, the region had already been living with the knowledge that one century's crown jewel had become another century's liability. A mill town is a fragile thing when the mill stops believing in itself. The result was not just unemployment, it was a rearranging of gravity. Stores lost customers, houses lost value. The town's self image, once industrial and proud, had to make room for uncertainty. Then the mountain became the pitch. Millinocket sits at the edge of Mount Katahdin. Like I said in the trailer, that's my mountain and the northern terminus of the Appalachian Trail. I didn't know it at that time when I was having a sandwich at the rest area with my grandparents. But when I saw it, I knew that was going to be a mountain that I had to conquer, as does many hikers every year. Which means the town has gradually rebranded itself as a gateway for hikers emerging from the 100-mile wilderness, footsore and hungry and about as far from a boardroom as a person can get. That new economy is quieter than paper, but it's real. Guide services, lodging, food, gear, social media posts about the last stop before the climb. The town's language has shifted from pulp to pedometers, from tonnage to trail miles, from shift changes to summit attempts. There's irony there, but not cheap irony. It's serious. The same geography that once fed a machine now feeds a pilgrimage. What haunts Millinocket now is the size of what used to be normal. The industrial footprint is still enormous, even when the portions of it sit quiet or repurposed. The town still carries the architecture of a company system that assumed permanence. Streets built for workers, infrastructure built for production, a culture built around the idea that the mill would always be there, humming behind the scenes like weather. Now the old buildings sit in a different tense. Some are gone, some are waiting. Some have become symbols of loss and possibility at the same time, which is a very Maine way to endure history by letting the same building mean two opposite things depending on who's standing in front of it. And that's the real ghost, not just the mills themselves, but the confidence they created. The belief that a place can be organized around one great engine forever. Millinocket is a distinctly American story because it fuses two national myths that rarely coexist comfortably. One is the frontier myth: wilderness, endurance, Katahdin, Thoreau, the guide, the climb, the hard beauty of the North Woods. The other is the industrial myth: company towns, immigrant labor, power generation, peak wages, output, national distribution. For a while, both myths lived in the same place. Then one of them got cheaper. That's the universal truth here. Places built on extraction often have to reinvent themselves when extraction stops paying. Sometimes they become heritage sites, sometimes retirement communities, sometimes trail towns, sometimes all three in no orderly sequence. The bones remain. The purpose changes. Millinocket and East Millinocket are still there. Not as they were, that version is gone. But the town remains at the edge of the mountain, carrying the echo of log drives, midnight shifts, and the clatter of a paper machine running like a law of nature. Now, the hikers come through dusty and starving after the wilderness. The old industrial town hands them a bed, a meal, and a place to stand before Katahdin. That's the new bargain. Less pulp, more pilgrimage. And maybe that's the last useful thing the mills taught the place: how to turn what was left into something somebody else can carry. This has been Drive-Thru Towns. I'm your host, Andrew Wilcox. A special thanks to Chloe Jones for providing our music. If you enjoyed this journey, please follow the podcast to stay updated on all our upcoming episodes. To keep the conversation going, you can connect with me on Instagram at 50 State Family. Find me on LinkedIn under Wilcox Legal, or reach out directly via email at wilcoxlegal@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next road.
'Cause I was wandering free on an American dream with a million things to see and do. But it's all good, I'm fine. Had the time of my life, 'cause I did it all.